Hello. So, welcome everyone to this session of Sahaj meditation. And tonight I'll give a talk as usual, and then we'll have an extract of a talk of Sri Mataji's, and and then we'll have meditation. So, seeing that it was St. George's Day on Tuesday, and St. George is our patron saint here in England, and that he incarnated in the form of William Blake here, I thought I would return to the topic of England as the heart and our responsibility towards defending these qualities of the heart against attack and expressing these qualities in our culture, society, and everyday life. I'm talking about England, but it could equally be said that wherever we live, we have a responsibility to defend, establish, and express the proper qualities of that country in particular, or of the chakra that that country represents. Now, it's certainly true that England, I say England, as Mother always did, but really I mean Britain as a whole, is under attack and needs defending. I think we're all aware of this in one way or another. I mean, there's really nowhere in the world that isn't under attack in one way or another. We're not being attacked militarily here, thank God, as Ukraine is, but we are being attacked culturally, psychologically, deeply. And the good health of England, especially, is vital because, as Mother said, if the heart fails, the whole body fails. If the heart fails, the body stops functioning. So the attack is on the heart. All the satanic forces and demonic forces and destructive forces will try to attack the heart naturally, because if they attack any other place, then the body will still be functioning. So first they will try all their methods to attack the heart. I'm saying this, she said, because Sahaja yogis should understand their responsibility. If this heart becomes frozen through inertia, there is no hope for the whole world, and neither for the universe or for this creation. There is no hope. That was said in 1980, but the situation has not noticeably improved. Certainly, many afflictions have come to this country lately in the form of breakaway nationalist agitation within its borders in Scotland and Wales, and in the form of a surprisingly deep and persistent division between those who think Brexit was a good thing and those who think it was a bad one, and in the form of rapidly escalating mental health problems, especially among the young, and a growing sick note culture, as they call it, people calling off their work through sickness, real or imagined, and in the form of a breakdown in law and order, at least when it comes to burglaries and shoplifting, to most of which the police turn a blind eye, and so on and so on. Besides which, we don't have to look far to see that there has been an outbreak of oikophobia, as they call it, meaning the dislike or even hatred of one's own country or culture, especially in England, but also in the West generally. And along with all this has come a great deal of confusion, even among yogis, as to the nature of these afflictions, whether they're actually afflictions, problems, or whether they're signs of spiritual progress. Some people think one thing, others another. For example, it may well be that these afflictions have come and continue to come because of the way the English were so dominating in the past. But that doesn't mean we should simply welcome this and think, good, the English are getting what they deserve, serves them right. Let them take the knee, grovel a bit, it'll do them good. That does not seem to me to be a sensible, benevolent, or in any way constructive attitude for people who believe in the power of forgiveness and are concerned with making the heart of the world a place that, as Sri Mataji says, has the strength to love, that radiates love, that circulates the qualities and discoveries and innovations of the unconscious, and also that works to carry all the dirt and filth of useless, negative, rubbish culture away from the world of the present. The heart cannot do this great work if it's riven with division and crippled by guilt. The situation is not unlike the one prefigured by Yeats, the poet Yeats, in his great poem written just after the First World War, The Second Coming. He's talking about an onrush of negativity that belongs together with, or which is trying to prevent, the second coming of Christ. In it, he thinks about the second coming, and his unconscious throws up an image of a sinister sphinx awakening. The poem goes like this. Turning and turning in the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart, the centre cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The blood-dimmed tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. Surely some revelation is at hand. Surely the second coming is at hand. The second coming, hardly are those words out, when a vast image out of spiritus mundi troubles my sight. Somewhere in sands of the desert, a shape with lion body and the head of a man, a gaze blank and pitiless as the sun, is moving its slow thighs, while all about it reel shadows of the indignant desert birds. The darkness drops again, but now I know that 20 centuries of stony sleep were vexed to nightmare by a rocking cradle. And what rough beast, its hour come round at last, slouches towards Bethlehem to be born. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. It's an ambiguous poem, just as Yeats was an ambiguous character, but there's a lot of truth in that statement. It's often remarked these days that an agenda is being set, again, not only in England, but in the West generally, by people who have radically new ideas about what kind of country we should be living in and which way our world should go, while others, maybe the so-called silent majority, can see that something is happening and don't much like it, but can't quite see what it is or how to stop it, or whether in fact they should just accept it and try not to stop it because they deserve it. This new agenda has to do with trying to replace the old idea of the sovereign nation state with a different kind of state altogether, one that is more of a utopian international zone of multiculturalism, whose watchwords are those increasingly familiar ones: diversity, inclusivity, and equality or equity, but especially the first two. To promote these things is seen as being politically progressive. I'm not suggesting for a single moment that this agenda is some kind of secret conspiracy with a Mr. Big behind it. For one thing, it's happening openly, not secretly, and for another, it's being promoted by different forces which ultimately have very different goals, including Islamists on the left side and globalists on the right, although it's mainly being promoted by the latter because they have the real power. That's one side of the coin. The other side of this agenda is that in order to push for and establish a new kind of state, one that is run by internationally minded bureaucrats, we could say, the old sovereign nation state has to be dismantled bit by bit. This means subjecting its history to sustained criticism, breaking down its long-standing traditions, the old patriotism, the old identifications, and the old idea of a national character. Agreed, traditions can die away in any case. I've just been looking at Alice Gomb's book, Traditional Games of England, Scotland and Ireland, which was published at the end of the 19th century, a long time ago, and describes 800 different children's games, and there are many variations depending on the localities in which they were played. There's something fascinating about the strange poetry of their names, such as Accrochet and King of the Barbary and Nuts in May and The Last Couple in Hell, and about the songs that belong to many of them. But I don't imagine that more than a handful of them survive today, hopscotch, noughts and crosses, and hide and seek being among them. But other traditions have survived, and where they are sensible ones, they give life a richness as well as giving society a binding force and a sense of belonging to individuals. Srimati was definitely an advocate of the value of this kind of tradition. Edmund Burke, the Anglo-Irish politician of the late 18th century, whom I've talked about before, felt something similar. To quote Yuval Levin in a recent essay, Burke is very concerned with the love of country. We might say with nationalism as a kind of patriotism, which he takes to be essential to a healthy political life. He thinks this sentiment runs very deep in most people. As he put it at the Warren Hastings trial in 1794, Hastings was Governor General of India who was accused of corruption. That's another story. So as Burke puts it, next to the love of parents for their children, the strongest instinct, both natural and moral, that exists in man is the love of his country. This deep love of country has great political significance in Burke's view. It is crucial to what holds a people together and to why people respect the law and the authority of their government. When the French tried to tear up the sources of this national sentiment and replace them with abstractions about the rights of man, as Burke puts it, they left the law with no support except the power of the state. And yet, the key to this love of our country is not just that the country is ours. To make us love our country ought to be lovely, Burke famously wrote in the Reflections on the Revolution in France. This is very like what Mother said in 1981 in the talk we're going to listen to in a minute. I mean, if you really love this country, then create it into a lovable place, isn't it? You must try to destroy all that is retarding the progress, the spiritual progress of this country, if you are a real Englishman. So this is what I'm defending tonight, the idea that love of country does have a role in our spiritual lives. As little as 15 or 20 years ago, I don't think such a defense would have been necessary, but today it very much is. Today, the cultural agenda that I've been talking about is like a subtler version of the French Revolution, with its right-sided emphasis on abstract ideas over native feelings. Or perhaps it's more like the Chinese Cultural Revolution of the 1960s, the aim of which was to attack the four olds: old ideas, old culture, old customs, old habits. There was indeed a Mr. Big and his government behind it. Here, this agenda is being promoted less by governments as such than by a particular disposition shared by the cultural elite, the people who run the museums, the arts in general, publishing, the BBC, university administration, and so on. And also by people who live mainly in cyberspace and therefore feel little or no affiliation to the actual country around them or the country of their birth. Through these people, the feeling of love for one's own country has come under relentless intellectual attack. To be patriotic is seen as the same as being prejudiced, bigoted, xenophobic, uneducated, a closet colonialist, a secret imperialist, nostalgic for a mythical golden age. The process of so-called decolonization has led to a serious revision of our history, with, for example, the Welsh government placing figures as central to the defence of this realm in history, as Sir Francis Drake, Lord Nelson, and the Duke of Wellington under suspicion. Recently, there was the case of a London council telling a fish and chip shop owner to remove the painting of a Union Jack on his wall because it could be deemed offensive. Likewise, the St. George's flag of England is now suspect because multiculturalists associate it with the far right. In place of patriotism, in place of the sense of a national identity, has been put this abstract idea of multiculturalism, and national characteristics have been replaced by identity politics. Identifying with one's racial or sexual or other minority community is considered of much more importance, much more real than any sense of national belonging, which is seen as a kind of false consciousness, a creation of right-wing propaganda, a bit of a joke. And of course, many people think that this is progressive, this is all good. When, during a recent discussion, I asked some yogis why they were so opposed to Trump, not because I was trying to defend him, but because I was curious to know why he had become such an archetype of evil to them and to others whom they were echoing. The answer came back at once: nationalism. He's a nationalist, the sum of all things bad. Well, if we define nationalism as the prejudiced, conditioned opinion that one's own country is somehow better than all others, that the world revolves around it or should revolve around it, and that other countries, often our closest neighbors, are in some sense our enemies or our rivals, then yes, nationalism is a sad, crude, ugly affair. But surely there's a difference between nationalism and the sort of patriotism I've been talking about here. Still, does this matter? Does any of this matter? Didn't Sri Mataji make the point again and again that as realized souls, we no longer belong to our countries, the countries of our birth. We are universal people. Yes, she did. And in fact, she says in the talk we're going to listen to, that if we've taken our birth here, our responsibility is to be not just English, but more than English. It's to be universal. But I don't think she meant by this that patriotism is worthless. In fact, she said elsewhere, I respect a person who has patriotism in him. Patriotism is very much necessary within us. So the idea that patriotism is just the same as nationalism and has no place in the modern world seems to me silly. Sri Mataji told us that we shouldn't just love our own children. As Sahaja Yogis, we should love all children. But of course, that doesn't mean we shouldn't love our own children. We should only love other people's. And it's the same, I would say, with our native countries, our homelands. There's another point here, which is that however much we may love all children, we are only directly responsible for our own. That is a very different relationship from the one we have with other people's children. It's the same with our countries. It's all very well saying, I'm a Sahaja Yogi, I'm a global citizen, but I don't have any rights or responsibilities as one. It's an abstract term, global citizen, has very little practical meaning. But as a Briton, as an Englishman, I do have certain responsibilities towards my country, taxes to pay, voting rights, so on. And in any case, isn't it natural that I should be concerned just that little bit more about my own land than about other countries? It's not that that love of country is a simple matter of pleasure either. On the contrary, it's very much a two-edged sword. Just as with our own children, their good points and their successes are very pleasing to us, but their failures and difficulties or bad points pain us that much more than do the same aspects of other people's children. When I lived in Italy, I could see that it had its bad points as well as its good ones, but they didn't touch me nearly as much as do the bad points of my own homeland. So, I was reading the other day, to bring this talk to a close, I was reading the other day about an old manor house down in Somerset, not far from here, where the ghost of a man dressed in Elizabethan clothes can sometimes be seen, apparently, pacing up and down the great hall. Not, I imagine, because his boot is actually there, but perhaps because, as some people have theorized, profoundly felt incidents can somehow leave their mark on the texture of place. And there's a letter in existence, presumably written by the same man, saying he had heard that the Spanish Armada was coming up the Channel. This would have been in 1588. And adding, I spent last night walking up and down the house, praying for England. When I come across something like this, I can't deny that it touches me far more deeply than any abstract instructions about diversity and inclusivity could ever do. So that's a little exploration of the theme of loving one's country and whether this really has any value. So I'll ask Priti now to play the end of this beautiful talk, which was given at Guru Purnima, Chelsham Road in London in 1981, July 1981. We were there, and it was quite a strong talk. But this is the end of it, and she sort of, it starts kind of in mid-flow, but you'll pick it up as it goes on.
You have to be concerned about others. You have to behave in a way that they feel that you are the security for them. But that doesn't mean that you get after one person. There is, you see, everything you tell them goes into some sort of a mad mold. I don't know how it happens, whatever I say. For example, I say you should be concerned. Here I find that people start then, all right, I'm concerned. So they start working on a person. And then they'll come, mother, my left hand is finished. Why? I was working on such a person. Why? What was the need? You need not. That's not your job. Let them also work. You must know how to make them work also. Otherwise, you see, these lazy lumps will use you all the time. Let them also, tell them to get up and work. Arise. Why can't they work it out? They can work it out themselves. But then don't tell them, now you work it out. Not like that. Then another extreme can start. You should say, now see, you have a left side problem and I don't know, think that you should make me work it out. I think you can work it out. Let's see. I too had the same time. Let's work it out. You better put your left hand towards the photograph, put right hand outside. Do this way, that way, beat yourself. Left side is Adi Shakti's this thing. You can ask for Mahakali's powers, it can be worked. Give him all the knowledge. Say now try yourself, and then. Because if you are obliging too much also, then you make them dwarfs, you see. You have to be a tree which makes other grow into tree and not to make them dwarfs under it like the, you see, there is no grass can even grow under such trees. Leave alone trees. Even grass can't grow if the trees are of this kind. So you should be actually the tree of brilliance, of sun's rays. From you the sun's rays should flow and they should flow. Not to obstruct every growth of your disciples. What sort of a guru he could be, whose disciples are all our toddlers, or still sucking their thumbs? So you should be a guru of a caliber that makes others grow too. I have hopes that my disciples will grow more than I am. I have hopes. That's my desire. That's what I want. That my disciples should grow. I mean, that will be my pride. Like Ganesha grew more than his own mother, who created. That's what is my desire. And that's what I want you to realize, that you are the hope of the world. Either you should not have taken birth in England. If you have taken, you have more responsibility not to be English and to be universal, because you have taken birth in the heart of the universe. You cannot be small-minded. You cannot be chicken-hearted. Either you are frightened or you are aggressive. This is an impossible situation. You have to be so strong that nothing should make you frightened. And such a person is the most benevolent personality. He's not frightened of anyone. Why should he harm anyone? Today, I hope you people really don't listen to my lecture, but put it in your heart. And understand that you have to become very dignified, majestic gurus of this universe. I would like to ask William Blake, what is he doing? When is he going to take his birth on this earth? When people of his caliber are going to be born in this country? Or they are all running away again to some other place to be born? Marriage system of England is wretched. You cannot adopt those methods that these people are having. You want to have the great people to be born to you, and every time you are running towards a divorce cases. How can they be born in this country? You have to give up all these wretched systems of this country. Good of this country should be taken, whatever is good in it, and transform this country into a beautiful thing. I mean, if you really love this country, then create it into a lovable place, isn't it? You must try to destroy all that is retarding the progress, the spiritual progress of this country. If you are a real Englishman, real is the word. You should not be proud of all the weaknesses that are rolled up in all these hills and dales. All unholy thoughts, all inauspicious behaviors, all must be discarded.
So, if we put our attention to our heart, and we just relax into the sensation that we are at one with our mother. That we are in her heart, not separate, within her heart. She is within our hearts also. If we feel that sense of gloriousness, and bring it up to the Vishuddhi, to spread it, to communicate it, to express it in our daily lives. And bring it up again to the Agya, to forgive, to be very forgiving, to forgive ourselves, to forgive. And then up to the silence of the Sahasrara. So for the remaining time, I'll ask Priti if she could return to the music. And again, as always, if you prefer silence, just you can turn the volume off. But this is beautiful music, I must say. So I thought I'd finish by reading something, if you don't mind. It's nice, I'm sure you'll enjoy it. And it's very unusual. I don't think anyone will know this. It's from a book called The City That Shone by Vivian de Sola Pinto, who was a professor of English. And it's an autobiography. I've never read the whole thing, but I read the first part. And he comes to this strange experience that he had in London. I must have been about 8 or 9 years old when I had an experience which I find very difficult to describe. It was a fine evening. It was a fine evening in early spring, and I was walking down Heath Drive with another child, probably my sister, and behind us was Peggy walking with another woman. There was a fine view to the west across the housetops of West Hampstead and Kilburn, with the usual grey haze over London. And above it, the glowing splendour of the setting sun. This was about, must have been around just the beginning of the 20th century, about 1903. In that grey, hazy distance, illuminated by the soft sunset light, I saw a vision enclosed in a kind of circular frame. I described it to myself as a shining city full of people moving about among wonderful coloured flames, though I knew that this was a wholly inadequate description. I did not merely see this place, but I seemed to be in it and to be actually close to the shining people and one of them. Simone Weil, the philosopher, has said that the great misfortune of man is that seeing and eating are two different operations, and that the eternal beatitude is the state where seeing and eating are the same thing. At that moment, I achieved the beatific experience of seeing and eating at the same time, so to speak. My city full of shining people was absorbed into my childish mind-body. I never told anyone about this theophany. For one thing, my vocabulary was wholly inadequate then, as indeed it is now, to give a coherent description of what I had seen. And for another, I felt that it was altogether too holy and intimate a secret to share with anyone else. I wanted to keep it to myself, uncontaminated by words and arguments. I only saw it once again, and that was many years later in a dream. I had this dream soon after the First World War, when I was an undergraduate at Oxford and was used to working in large libraries. So this is about the time when Yeats wrote that poem, around the time that Mother was born. In my dream, I was walking along a gallery lined with bookshelves full of great folios. I took one of these big books down from the shelves and idly turned over the pages. On one of them was a marvelous picture. I recognized it at once as the shining city of my childish vision. And again, I had the ecstatic experience that I had enjoyed in Heath Drive when I was a little boy. As I was gazing in rapture at the picture, someone called me away. I put the book back in its place on the shelf and went off to attend to some trivial business for which I had been summoned. But as soon as I could, I hurried back to the gallery to find the magic picture. As I was searching in vain for it in one book after another, I awoke with mixed feelings of frustration at my failure and ecstatic joy at having seen the vision again. I suppose my theophany was what Jung calls a mandala vision, representing the archetypal human totality that exists in the depth of the unconscious mind, or being. Whatever it was, it certainly had a considerable effect on my character and mentality, far more than any religious creed or philosophical argument. It has given me the assurance that whatever appearances may be to the contrary, there is some sort of divine reality, and that I am in touch with it, and indeed, in some sense, a part of it. So, that's enough for tonight, and I wish you all a very good night. And I'll be here in the middle of next month. We're just doing, we're being allowed to do one a month now. Okay. Jai Shri Mach.